really avail fully of this session. Okay, sorry, I just need to get rid of this little announcement. So, and again, just a little bit of housekeeping, make sure that you are fully registered for this, that you're eligible for your CPD credits. So again, just to encapsulate, the focus of today's short session is on decision making, influences around me, career interests, and degree options. And we will make some time for discussion and Q&A after. And the kind of things that students will interface with when they're looking at this, I've just put them in bold, the types of possible career sectors and jobs that interest you, and the career influences around you and the influences in your life. And I suppose how that relates to how we make decisions and the different ways that we in fact make decisions. So module 2, picking a course that's right for you. They're going to be introduced to degree choices and future careers, and what we call the career clusters framework, something we've taken from the States, Minnesota, used in practically every state in the USA, and the 16 career clusters, which is part of that, the 16 career clusters framework. And module 3 introduces students to how do I make decisions? And what's involved in making an informed, fully informed choice? And what kind of steps do I need to take to complete before actually making the final decision, making sure that I really make the right decision? Just a throwback to last week as a reminder, this is very much what I like to call a 360-degree kind of more holistic experience and model. So there's a bit of everything in each of these themes. There's an introduction, there's a clear outline, this is what you will learn. There's some very nice video content. There's then very nice infographic posters that are just so easy for them to connect with that topic. There is nearly in all cases a downloadable interactive worksheet. There are invitations to reflect. They're all in bite-sized nice pieces, maybe about 15 minutes at a time. And of course, then they can keep feeding into and recording everything in their reflection organizer. And they are signposted onto other resources, both within UCC and outside of UCC. So some great signposting. So this is what it's going to look like as you are a student who come into it. So module 2 broken into 6 pieces, culminating with the quiz, which is always really nice. It just pulls things together and embeds what they've just learned and thought about and experienced. So you're introduced to degree choices and future careers. 2.2, the career clusters framework. The 16 actual career clusters, what that means. 2.4, well, career influences around me. And 2.5, further resources. And then module 3, they're introduced to, introduction to decision making. How do I make decisions? 3.2. 3.3, making an informed choice. 3.4, steps to complete before making your final decision, and further resources, and again, the quiz. So this is what it looks like. As I say, they're introduced first to a little bit, so it links back nicely to subject choices, because ideally they will have done quite a bit on their subjects before they start to embark on module 2. So they are aware of the subjects they like, the kind of content, the things they like about that subject, what they're learning, what they don't like, and all of that. And so they're linked back to thinking about that, and actually also reassured a little bit that while it links hugely to the degree program, you see a few things in bold there. Approximately 50% of graduate jobs do not require you to have a degree from a specific subject. We have a recruitment fair happening next week, over 110, I think, last count employers, and a huge percentage of those will be looking at the graduate, at the individual, rather than the discipline. That employers look for well-rounded graduates with well-developed graduate attributes and skills, a whole range of skills that they can bring with them into other environments. So they're introduced here very gently to 16 different core career clusters that help them kind of, it's a minefield when we think about careers, and career clusters is just a fantastic tool. If you've done the Masters in Guidance in UCC, you should be aware of it. I know I would have really promoted it. It's around for years, and it just kind of maps things out to make sense of it, because it really is a maze and a minefield. And then they're told they will be introduced, just even thinking about the career influences around them, and that they're challenged to explore and challenge that a bit more, to explore why thinking about careers also is important. They're told clearly what they will learn. By the end of this module 2, you will know and be able to identify various career clusters that are relevant to you. You will learn to recognize the various career influences around you, and you'll understand how career aspirations can guide you to your degree course, your degree. There's a very nice video that just steps them into it a little bit more. And here we get to look at the poster and a close-up. So these are downloadable posters. And I think the visual, it's really nice. I really like this approach because they're not overloaded with content. They're just brought into it a little bit more. And it's called Connecting the Dots, making clued in degree choices. And so, you know, there are little snippets that are planting seeds of information. And I think the visual, they're just very pleasing to engage with, and they can digest them. They're digestible chunks. You know, clue one. So the subjects you study and the way you like to think and learn and the type of personality you have all provide clear clues to the type of degree that would suit you. Clue one, follow your heart. Don't choose a course based, you know, on what other people have told you or on labour market trends. Opinions and trends vary and change. Ask yourself, clue two, what are your favourite subjects? And explore how they may link. Remember, the third level, you know, they really have to be self-motivated, and they are the ones in the middle of this experience. So it's really important. You know, going over to clue three, dig deep. Don't judge a course by its title. Some students find themselves on courses that are very different to how they imagine. Clue four, investigate every aspect and angle of that program. Be as thoroughly informed as possible. They'll read a little bit on that. And clue five, don't be overly influenced by points. I could write a book, if I had the time, on the number of students who make decisions based on things like this. You know, labour market trends, you may be a bit surprised to hear that, are hugely important. We know that they're hugely important. However, the number of people, and we know the research shows that they come into courses where there are high labour market, you know, that they're really strong growth areas. So particularly in the whole technology area, this is not for everyone. Huge numbers of people come from other degrees, from arts and humanities degrees, and are really valued, and they come into tech after. You know, so it's like the number of people where I sit down and say, you know, so let's look at how did you start? How did you end up in this course? Talk me through how that happened. Oh, well, that's where all the jobs are. That's where I decided, you know, all the jobs are really strong, or I knew I'd get a job. And it's based solely on labour market trends. So it's very, very important for them to kind of get that sense of really being aware of all of these. And again, course titles, just they make an assumption. We all do. We just make assumptions about things, and they step into something they haven't investigated. Points is another big one, where they undervalue courses that do not have high points. It's a supply-demand labour market, almost a capitalist system in a way. The amount, the supply, and the profile of the people applying. It has nothing to do with the quality of the course. So these are just really important bits, and it brings them into it. It's very valuable. After that, they're then slowly, so they're, you know, they're thinking about their important influences like that. So now it's time for them to come in and just be introduced to career clusters, and we just explain that it's a very nice way of mapping out and making sense of various career fields. And there's a lovely video here. It's American. Career clusters has come from the States. It's highly validated. I have used it personally for years. Just the evidence there shows me that this is a very useful tool for so many people. And of course, we always have to be mindful that there is no one career assessment, profiling exercise, or assessment anywhere that sums people up. But it's a very useful part of what I call the jigsaw puzzle portrait of each individual. So this talks them through and really introduces what you're going to do when you embark and engage with career clusters. You're going to take a survey that you know, see what clusters match you, explore the different clusters, and ultimately that will help lead you towards choosing a favorite cluster. And there may not be one. Generally, we ask them to look at 3. So then they're brought in more detail, and we have a really, really nice large infographic poster here on the 16 career clusters. So they get to view just an overview of all of these, and encourage them to really take the time to look at it. Very readable again, and aesthetically, I think, kind of pleasing. And as we see this, you know, this program is for everyone. We can see some areas here that won't have primary degrees necessarily in UCC linked to those courses. So this is universal. This is a program for everyone, regardless of whether they start at PLC level and remain at that level or otherwise. So they get to see some of those, and then they're invited to maybe reflect and think a little bit. Okay, what clusters could you imagine working and why? Does any cluster maybe look particularly interesting? And so on. And they're asked to think about that for a bit. And then now I think is the right time to embark on the actual worksheet exercise. It's so easy. I think so many students, and we as busy guidance counselors as well, it's very easy to go off and do the assessment and see what churns out. It's far more complex than that, as you're well aware. So I think this step-by-step phase process is really, really valuable. It's then that we ask them to do the survey. This survey I have kept, I've scrutinized it to keep it as accurate as I can and as faithful to, but I've slightly de-Americanized it and I've Irishized it. So I've localized this for you. So there are some minor changes, but it has been scrutinized in order to, so here they're asked to think about, there are activities, personal qualities and subjects. And they're asked to really think about these, and there is no minimum or maximum. I encourage them to really think, and read the guidelines at the top, not to overthink it, and to actually trust and rely on the fact that they know themselves and they have the ability to imagine things. Because here, as let's face it, with all assessments, there's an amount of imagination. So, they're going to read about activities that they probably, in most cases, they've never actually experienced so many of these. But the personal qualities and the subjects they can relate to, the activities take a bit more imagination. So encourage them to really engage with it as fully as possible and to not worry about what they take, because sometimes if they're very conscientious students, they can just kind of nearly, oh, well, that's not 100% true, so I'm not going to tick that. It's good to see more than less and to get a sense of profile. And then so there were 16 of these panels, these clusters, and it's actually, then this is just a snapshot of what the following pages look like. So they collate all of it, they calculate what they have for each section, and then it just gives this overview. Let's just look at 3, for example, arts, humanities, creative use of digital technology and communications. So it just gives this very brief description: creating, designing, producing, exhibiting, performing, writing, publishing, creative digital media content, including visual and performing arts and design and journalism, public relations, marketing, entertainment services, and so on. And they will have that for each cluster. And they're invited to look at, what are the top 3. And what's really interesting with this is I actually, as a guidance counselor, I think it's very interesting to look at the pattern of how they engage with this, because some will be very unsure. You might notice actually that the ratio of the number of activities to personal qualities to subjects is different with some. People who often what we call have that kind of low vocational profile, or the flat profile, as John Holland would have called it, is, they might have experienced less in life actually, and they then are only focusing maybe on the personal qualities, maybe some of the school subjects, and there may not be much on the activities side. They're not confident enough to kind of tick those. So it's interesting to see the balance and to encourage students to also not just look at the numbers and what are my clusters, but to step back and just look, to take a few steps back and look at just the kind of pattern and map of what they've selected, and to engage with it in that way as well. I think it's actually very valuable. And of course, the beauty of this is, I'm just going to step back to that for a moment, is of course that can link out then to, what I mean, there are novel ways of using this. I sometimes would ask people, okay, let's just pick some of these headings and just put in a CAO, get into the CAO website and just put in one of those searches, under the top of the theme, and break it up and just see what's there and start that exploratory process. Of course, here we love and encourage and hope so many of your students will come to UCC. We link them to courses then on our prospectus that we have available. But as I say, it's universal, it can link to any college. And it helps kind of orientate them. And they then move on to looking at influences around me. And I think this is incredibly important, because I don't think that they actually have that much opportunity to do this. Now, this comes from David Winters, the London Careers Group. He's part of the University of London, College London careers, and he's a real theory nerd, and he's got a whole blog called Careers in Theory. I might have suggested it again, any of you on the masters, I'm a real fan of it. So we've broken it down to just some of the more important parts of this. It talks about influencers, who's influencing my career thinking. So we've selected 5, and there's some detail in this, but it's valuable. So we just have bite-sized bits of information on kind of things where we can stereotype, like, oh, accountants are boring, or oh, nurses work, non-stop and they're exhausted, or oh, if you do something in creative arts, you'll never get a job, or there is stereotyping happens all the time. There may be what we call the bandwagon effect of, oh, nearly half the people in my school go off and do course X or Y, or mere exposure effect, depending on where we live geographically. We just hear of nearly 2/3 of the whole neighborhood going off and doing a certain type of course, or we're exposed to it because, maybe just in the economy, like, for example, the pharma sector is huge in Cork, and in this area, that has a huge bearing on the kind of courses that people think about. So all of these elements are there, and it gets them to think, or maybe somebody that they really admire, a lot of authority, may actually say, oh, you should do this. So it really develops their self-awareness and gets them to think of the influences. Social media, TV, huge influencer. Of course, it's more Netflix than TV these days. The economy, family, friends, the number of people, again, I might have worked with them, sitting in my office, and they say, oh, I wanted to do course X, that was on my first of my choice, but my neighbor's cousin told me that's a terrible course, and loads of people fail, or it's really hard. So I actually decided not to do it. And we all know of stories like that. So it's very important for them to be aware of these influences. And then they have this reflective activity. They can download the career influences around me, infographic, poster, and really we encourage them to spend time thinking about those and what influences are true for me, and to realize how that might impact on them, and what steps and actions they take to really widen their horizons and look further and wider. So they download that, and we ask them to take about 10 or 15 minutes to think about that, work it through, and again, discuss it. Family, friends, guidance counsellors, school, again, the list is endless, and then we move on to just an overview of the kind of links we have within and outside of UCC, all of which you'd be very familiar with. We then move into asking them to think about decision-making styles, and I think this is something new that we're offering as well that is quite unique. So it may feel a little bit of a stretch for them, depending, but certainly I think in 5th year and leaving cert, they're ready for this. So we tie together and link together a lot of all the other things that they've done already. But in this module, you will be introduced to different decision-making styles, and this might come in handy, when it comes to making a big decision in your life. And you learn also how to reflect on your own individual decision-making style, and encourage you to, again, reflect and discuss and so on. So the learning here is you will identify 4 decision-making styles, the 4 key ones, recognize your own unique style and how that might fit, how that fits with your personality, and plan your next steps. And there is a nice video on that again to engage them. Now, this is adapted from the Silver Enhancement decision-making style. We use this here in UCC as well with people. And it's an overview of, it's a very easy to do thing. So and what I really like about it, it's not an either or. They actually distribute kind of values to different statements rather than yes or no. So they end up looking at, so this is just a little closer snapshot at decision-making styles. And, every one of these has a part to play in thorough and informed, holistic decision-making. Some people, of course, are very logical. Some people want every little bit of detail before they actually make a decision. They need, and I've encountered that with students, and I'm sure you have, when they're coming back to you again and again with another 49 questions, and it's like they need the information 100% rather than also an element of sort of going with their gut and their instinct and their interest. So there's the global, the big picture, the personable, often to be aware where actually other people's influences and taking other things like that into account can influence the decisions. So there's a piece for every, so really, if I were using this as good, I'd really be looking at the value of every part, these 4 aspects, all have parts to play in decision making. But I think it's something quite unique we're offering, because I don't think that they think about this too much. I think the influences around me and the way I make decisions, and do I have a tendency to maybe just go down one of these avenues? I think they're able for, and I think it's a valuable piece. We then move on after that. So of course, to remind you, they have this really nice organizer where they can reflect and they gather all of that together in one place. And I would really be encouraging them to do that. And this is all so simply laid out for them that they will be able to see this. They have a very nice video introducing them, of course, to UCC. We'd love them to come to UCC. And student talking about UCC here. So I suppose I brought this in and added a little bit more to it. If you were present last Friday, you would have seen some of the suggested uses that I've introduced, and I have a few more. So I'd like to just spend a little bit of time going over those again before we have some discussion. So some of the uses for modules 1 to 3, the guidance modules, you could give an overview of the entire program on a screen share. You could encourage students maybe to engage with the modules independently outside of your own school guidance program and to discuss it with family and friends, and it can really enhance what you're doing. Or with the further 2 points are around, maybe you could introduce a topic in a guidance class or an element of the module, and maybe agree on some assigned reflection and exercise that they do into the in the module content after that. And then follow up with in-class discussions and reflections and questions and so on. I think there's a really comprehensive package here that I have years of faith in. This is based on not something pulled out of the sky. It's actually based on years of actually using these kinds of tools, and these ones in particular. And my own experience is that these give a very thorough, they're just very, very valuable. So, one suggestion I'd ask you to really seriously consider is to consider having students complete all the modules prior to, if they're lucky enough to have a one-to-one guidance consultation, because I know how difficult that is to provide that for every student. I think with TY, again, of course, just I've mentioned that, particularly in the modules 1 and 2, they can really facilitate good decision-making senior cycle, particularly around subject choice. Other novel ideas I've added in today and I put in bold are, careers, class careers debating teams, maybe. You could have thought-provoking debates on career influences and decision-making styles. It can just prompt them. It's all going to edge them towards career readiness, the readiness to think about this and to make decisions. Or, another alternative might be groups with similar career cluster results could pool together and they could research, share, and present course information to each other, career information in assigned teams in and out of class. So I think, they can really help each other out, and it's going to provoke and stimulate their thinking and information. I had included these last week in case you hadn't again, but I think there's a lot of opportunity here to introduce this content in TY. It could be nurturing bright futures projects. They could give a presentation on an aspect of it, put in their portfolio of learnings. They could start a whole 3-year portfolio, starting with the subject exploration, focusing, and move the way up. I really like the idea of a buddy system as well. I know, maybe 5th year buddy system, they pair up, completing each module and discuss and share with each other. I know the number of students often that I engage with, they say, oh, everyone in my class seems to know what they want to do. And they say, oh, and I think it becomes this kind of social topic, when they're in 5th year and 6th year. What are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to do such and such. Actually, the vast majority of students, from my experience, I think so many of them don't know, but it becomes this social topic like the weather when you're at that life stage. No, I'm going to do this. And often, they nearly talk themselves into a decision before making it early. So I think, it breaks down that kind of perception in classes often that it's like, oh, God, everyone with me seems to know what they want to do. Well, they don't, they're still exploring. So we're really, really interested to hear your suggestions, and really interested, just to remind you of the advantages. This is designed for students to make the right decisions for them. It's really designed in good faith based on a lot of experience. I think it's got so much possibility, but don't hold back. We would love students to use, to come to UCC. This is of use to students regardless of what they progress on to or where they go. And we'd really appreciate your feedback. There's an anonymous questionnaire. So, I mean, any chat, any questions, just, you know, unmute yourself and we'll really be delighted to discuss these. I guess if we do take any questions, it might be good to maybe stop the recording now. I don't know, it's up to you, but any thoughts or questions? I'm just reminding you of all of the resources that are available here on this link, issue.com. So the Nurturing Bright Futures worksheets and infographic posters, Nurturing Bright Futures, I have them all here on my desk as well. Graduate attributes, and the so there's a lot here. It goes through each module, and notes for parents and notes for guidance counselors. I mean, I think another, you're all very busy, but I think another great opportunity here is very much, we were talking about it linking to last week, you know, getting parents really in a very, you know, informed, systematic way, getting them involved in what's supporting them very much in what's, you know, a very important decision-making process and a whole series of experiences and learnings that students need to go through, that their sons and daughters need to go through, or parents or guardians. So we will have first generation students, and depending on the school you're in, there can be a huge number of first generation students, and parents really want to help, and they can feel, I think they can become very, very empowered and informed and educated and guided to become part of this process. So this is very much part of and sometimes, you know, parents with the best intentions in the world have a rather overbearing influence sometimes on, you know, on their sons and daughters without realizing it, or they may be trying to kind of nudge them a certain way, not really understanding the whole process fully. It depends, they're all coming from different places, but I think that this has great potential to be, that they become part of this journey in a way that's actually really supporting them through and learning themselves through the whole process. So, you know, there's depending on the kind of school you're in or the receptivity to this, I think there's great potential here. If there is some kind of parents' evenings off, and there can be, I know in my own children's school, there was you know, there would have been an evening before they embarked on senior cycle. So we would have been there, say in 5th year, and there might have had a few past students back talking about study skills, and if you know, so it was a student and parents' evening. Every school does things differently, but I think something like that, this is a great opportunity to introduce this to parents. That's another idea. That's something certainly that I would be quite excited about if I were back working in schools. If you have any questions, please don't hold back. You know, I'm really delighted to be part of a conversation, and at another stage, if we need to be part of it, you know, having used this, we'd really be interested to have other discussions about this and how you found this.
There were a couple of comments in the chat there as well, Mary. Just people really just kind of saying how much they, you know, giving positive feedback on the modules, etc. And just to remind everyone who's here today as well that we have also sent a selection of their A2 sized posters. So there's a set of 6 posters which have hopefully either landed with you or are on their way to you. And if they don't arrive in the next week or so, please feel free to reach out to us and we can get another set sent to you. But they are the posters that you will have seen in Mary's sessions today and last week. So on multiple intelligences, on the subjects, and also on the career clusters. So there we've blown them up so that they're, I suppose, something that you could maybe have on your own office wall, or maybe in a common space like a notice board, etc. So just to say that if they don't arrive, if you'd like an extra set, please feel free to get back in touch with us.
Yes. And hi, Niamh, thanks for your comment. There's one name I recognize there. Good to hear from you. I see so many people here today. That's great. Thank you very much, everyone. And I really wish you the best with engaging with this. I did it myself, you know, on a few occasions to really just get back into that reality. I was kind of having to pummel my own senior cycle child at home to do it, but he did do it. I found it very useful. And I just have a lot of experience of all of these. So really that's what I've been sharing and pulling all this together. And I suppose maybe might you say something about Ethna's session next? Ethna's had to leave us, but she's sat in, and I look forward to sitting in on that session as well next week.
It's actually this Friday. So
it's this Friday. Yeah, sorry.
It's this Friday.
It's this Friday.
It's this Friday at the same time, 12:30, same channel, and it will be exploring a learning mindset. So we hope everyone can make it, and I think maybe we can conclude it there. Unless there are any other questions.
Thank you. I look forward to it myself.
Perfect. And thank you, Niamh Garv Margaret, for that comment. We will definitely take that under consideration as well, having an Irish version of the posters for you. So thank you very much.
Great. Oh, yeah, Niamh. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mary. Well done. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
well
you.
done, Mary.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye
Thanks,
all.
everyone.
Thanks a million.
Everyone.